A bride in a mud-streaked wedding dress appeared at the cafe door, trembling and silent as the storm howled around her. She didn't go back to her billion-dollar wedding. The owner asked nothing. He simply handed her a cup of hot cocoa and said, "You don't have to explain here." What he didn't expect was this: she wasn't just running away. She was the only person who could make him believe again. Because sometimes what we need isn't answers, just a place warm enough to sit, breathe, and be still. And maybe you'd stay too, if you've ever wanted to leave, if only for a moment. Outside, the rain fell as if the entire sky had given way, pounding against the wooden awnings of the old lakeside street. The cafe windows at Harbour Lights had become little more than shimmering pools, streaked with rivulets chasing each other down the glass. On the cobbled road, every movement had been washed away. The town itself seemed to vanish into the grey, muffled by wind and cold. Inside, though, was another world entirely. Warm, quiet. The air carried the faint, comforting sense of wood, cocoa, and pastries, still soft from the oven. In the corner, a small radio hummed gently, playing old jazz. Ella Fitzgerald's honeyed voice curling through the room as if she were there in person, crooning for just one listener. Behind the counter, Noah dried the last glass of the day. He was used to this kind of hush on rainy afternoons. Storms like this didn't unsettle him. They meant early closing, a hot drink for himself, and a chance to revisit music from the years when his father was still alive. He'd already poured the first cocoa of the evening, a quiet ritual. The steam drifted lazily upward, merging with the stillness around him. It was habit, not necessity. A private, steadying gesture, a cup to mark the beginning of peace. He was about to turn away when the soft chime of the wind bell sliced. Through the silence, delicate yet sharp as a blade, Noah looked up. Standing in the doorway, framed by the heavy rain, was a girl. Or more precisely, a figure, small, trembling, utterly adrift. She wore what had once been a white wedding dress, now soaked and clinging, caked with mud. Her hair hung plastered to her face, and she hugged herself as though there was nothing left to hold on to but her own thin arms. Noah froze, not with shock, but with the stillness that comes when something defies every ordinary expectation. Without asking, without hesitation, he stepped out from behind the counter and opened the door. Cold wind swept in, carrying the taste of rain. He stood between her and the storm, his voice low but steady against the roar. "Come in. You'll get sick out there." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flickered over his face, not suspicious, not trusting, simply emptied by exhaustion, as if there were no choices left. Slowly she crossed the threshold. Each step left faint, glistening marks on the wooden floor. Her dress dragged in the puddles, painting ghostly streaks as though she herself might dissolve. Noah said nothing. He retrieved a large towel and gently draped it over her shoulders as she stood shivering. He didn't ask why she had come, or about the wedding dress, or the storm, or even her name. He just set a fresh cup of hot cocoa before her on the table near the fireplace. "It's not coffee," he said quietly, as soft as the towel around her, "but hot cocoa helps on the worst days." The girl, now starting to thaw, cupped the mug with cold, fragile fingers. She looked up, lips pale and quivering. "Thank you," she whispered. The words were faint but sincere, as if she hadn't spoken them in earnest for a very long time. Noah only nodded and returned to his place behind the counter. He didn't turn off the music. He didn't pour a drink for himself. He just stayed there, still and steady, as though the cafe had reached its perfect, quiet balance, with only the two of them inside. The girl, Claire, settled into a high-backed chair and leaned her head back. Her eyes wandered, taking in the old shelves, the faded black-and-white photo of Noah's father above the piano, the handwritten chalk menu smudged by afternoon rain. She asked nothing. Noah asked nothing. Between them stretched a rare and tender silence, the kind that falls when strangers instinctively understand that something precious and broken in each of them deserves to rest. Even if only for a night, Ella Fitzgerald kept singing softly from the radio, her voice stitching itself into the fabric of the room like a quiet spell. But into each life, some rain must fall. And sometimes those rains carry a person exactly where they're supposed to be. Claire sat quietly by the fire, hands wrapped tightly around the cooling cocoa. Inside, she still roiled like the storm outside, yet for the first time all day she felt herself soften. She could sit, just sit. Noah watched her face, not with curiosity, but with something older, something familiar. He saw in her the reflection of someone who had once fought hard to survive the scrutiny of the world, needing nothing more than a place where no one asked why or demanded more. And so, when Claire finally broke the silence with her first tentative question, the invisible space between them began ever so gently to melt. The fire had been burning low for over an hour, crackling softly like a sigh released into the quiet of the night. Claire had drawn closer, hands still cradling her now cold cocoa, yet the warmth from the towel and the wooden walls clung to her like a tender memory. The cafe had learned to breathe with its stranger. Slowly, Claire rose from her chair. Her wedding dress, still heavy and soaked, dragged behind her, pulling reluctant steps toward the small bookshelf tucked in the corner. She didn't know why she gravitated there. Maybe because she'd grown so used to being seen as ornamental. She needed just this once to choose something unscripted. Her fingers skimmed the spines. Nothing flashy, worn covers, edges softened by time. One slim volume caught her eye, no title, bound only with a simple twine. Curious, Claire slid it free. It wasn't a book, it was a notebook, old, its pages yellowed, ink faded. Like whispers, she sank back into the chair near the fire and opened the first page. The handwriting was slanted and gentle. Day 12, winter. Today, Noah asked again why his father never liked cocoa. I couldn't answer, but I knew when someone needs kindness, they're not seeking caffeine. They're seeking the feeling of being cared for, even if it's just through a warm cup in their hands. Claire read slowly, something inside her loosening. She turned more pages, each revealing tender fragments of a mother's days, tending the garden, running the cafe, raising a boy filled with questions and wonder. Then, she stopped. If someday you find someone lost, don't ask why. Just give them a cup of cocoa. Don't try to understand everything. Just let them know you're a place they can rest. She closed the notebook, pressing it gently in her lap. A heaviness filled her chest, but strangely something eased at the same time. Returning the notebook to its place, she sat still for a long moment. And then, as though something fragile within her cracked open, she spoke, her voice soft but unmistakably real, like a shard falling onto the wooden floor. Aren't you going to ask me? Noah, wiping the last glass of the night, paused. He looked up, his eyes calm, unsurprised. One brow arched slightly, as though he'd been waiting for her to wonder that aloud. Setting the glass down, he answered quietly, a faint smile brushing the corner of his mouth. Not everyone wants to tell their story on their worst day. Claire said nothing, but it wasn't his words that struck her. It was the way he said them, without intrusion, without performance, without pity, just there. Noah took a seat across from her, leaving the right amount of space. Not too close, not too far. This place was my mother's, he said after a pause. She taught me not to push people. Sometimes a cup of cocoa is enough to remind someone they're still human. Claire studied him. For the first time, all day, something different stirred in her gaze. Not fear, not panic, but something softer. Something like wonder or gratitude. I wish there were more places like this, she murmured. Noah smiled faintly, though his eyes carried a distant "Ask." He didn't reply. He simply turned toward the window, where the storm still lashed but had gentled as though tired. The girl in the wedding dress no longer seemed like chaos personified. She seemed human. And to Noah, it didn't matter who she was. She was beginning to look like something familiar, just as his mother once said, someone lost but brave enough to knock on a cafe door in the middle of a storm. Claire tightened her hold on the cooled cup, leaning back into her chair. The fire cast flickering reflections across her glasses, golden and tender against the hush of the room. Then, without warning, a loud crack of thunder split the quiet. Claire flinched, the cup tilting dangerously in her hands. Noah's hand shot out, steadying hers just in time. Warm cocoa splashed onto his skin, hot, but nothing compared to the subtle electric jolt that passed between them in that suspended instant. They both froze, and for the first time, the space between them closed enough for each to hear the other's heartbeat. The rain hadn't let up. If anything, it sounded heavier, as though nature itself was trying to wash something clean deep inside the hearts of those awake at this hour. Claire had changed out of her wedding dress. The oversized grey hoodie Noah offered her at dawn made her look small, almost swallowed up by the rustic space around her. Her damp hair was pulled back loosely with an old elastic band Noah had found in a drawer behind the counter. Now, the two of them stood side by side, facing a tattered poster advertising the cafe's specials. The wind and rain had torn one corner loose. Claire insisted on helping. "So what's your plan to fix this?" she asked, already reaching for the roll of tape on the shelf without waiting for an answer. Noah handed her a fresh sheet of paper, along with a pen and scissors. "You can cut the border for me. You're good at drawing, right?" She shot him a quick look, lips curving faintly. "I've never drawn food, but I'll try to make the apple pie look at least edible." They both laughed. Not loud, but soft. The kind of laughter that slips out naturally when you're working quietly beside someone who makes the air feel easy. Claire fumbled with the tape, using the wrong side and ending up tangled in it. She struggled to free herself, making it worse with each attempt. Noah laughed soundlessly beside her, his eyes bright not with amusement alone, but with something deeper, the rare delight of seeing her, not as a runaway, but as a clumsy girl trying to fix a simple sign. After 3 rounds of trial and error, they finally managed to put up the new poster. Claire propped her hands on her hips, letting out a satisfied breath. "You should give me credit on the menu," she declared. Noah nodded solemnly. "I'll make sure it says, 'Sign installed by unconventional artist Claire.'" She laughed then, really laughed for the first time since she had arrived. The sound rippled through the cafe, warm enough to make even the fire seem brighter. Outside, a sudden crack of thunder tore through the sky, shaking the wood-framed walls. Claire jumped, clutching her cocoa so tightly it tipped dangerously. Noah reacted in an instant. He reached out, steadying the cup, his hand brushing against hers. In that fleeting moment, they stood close, so close they could hear nothing but each other's breath and the rush of quiet beating in their chests. "Just thunder," Noah said softly, his eyes steady on hers. "You're safe here." She didn't let go of the cup, didn't pull her hand away. Silence settled again, gentle and tentative. Noah retreated briefly to the counter, returning with a thin blanket. Without a word, he draped it carefully over her shoulders. Claire didn't resist. She only looked up, meeting his gaze. No thank you, no questions, just her eyes, no longer frantic or guarded, but open in a way they hadn't been until now. They sat like that, together yet still, side by side in wordless accord. Outside, the rain kept falling, relentless and soft. Yet inside, something quieter had begun to bloom. Not the manufactured piece of soundproof walls, but the kind that happens only when two people stop hiding. No past confessions, no future promises. But somehow, both knew, here, at least tonight, neither of them was alone. Morning came. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy with a cold leaden grey. The lake behind harbour lights lay utterly still, a silent mirror holding the sluggish drift of clouds. Claire sat quietly on the porch, wrapped in the same oversized hoodie Noah had given her. She cupped her hands around a mug of coffee, eyes distant as though trying to recover something lost among the pale morning mist. Inside, Noah moved through the slow rhythm of preparing breakfast pastries. From the window he watched her, the girl who had once appeared in chaos, now fitting quietly into the soft edges of his world, like a puzzle piece finally in place. Then the bell over the door jingled sharply. Both of them, instinctively, turned. 3 young visitors entered, 2 women and a man, still damp from the drizzle, their laughter bright and careless as they brought a gust of new energy into the cafe. They ordered coffee, claimed seats by the window, and bantered over who got which chair like seasoned travelers chasing warmth. One girl pulled out her phone, adjusting her hair with practiced ease as she launched a live stream. "This place is so cute. Totally vintage, totally chill," she gushed to the camera, panning across the cozy space. The lens drifted, then halted abruptly on Claire. Unaware, Claire sat with her back to them, still facing the lake, serene, unguarded. But the internet didn't miss her. Comments exploded across the screen like sudden rain. "Wait, isn't that Claire Bennett? OMG, the runaway bride from yesterday. Where is she right now?" Notifications pinged furiously as viewers flooded in. The girl live streaming gasped and zoomed in without hesitation. Claire's profile, disheveled brown hair, elegant even without makeup, filled the screen. Too familiar to mistake. "Guys, look," she shrieked. "It's her, Claire Bennett, the bride from that billion-dollar wedding. Oh my God." Noah heard it. Mid-pour, he froze, his face tightening with something sharp and unreadable. Claire reappeared just then, stepping. "Inside," she caught the words instantly, her gaze snapping to the phone, then the strangers, and finally Noah. She stood motionless. The entire cafe seemed to hold its breath, everything tipping precariously. The storm from the night before had been nothing compared to this. This was the real wave, crashing without mercy. Noah didn't speak, but his eyes searched hers, confused, connecting pieces he hadn't even known were missing. Claire opened her mouth, but managed only a fragile gasp. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. "I didn't want you to know." Noah stared, unmoving. His voice came low, raw. "Why did you run?" Claire flinched. Her fingers clutched the hem of the hoodie as though it might hold her together. "Because I'm tired," she confessed, her voice spilling like floodwaters. "Tired of living a life designed by someone else. I just wanted to be myself, even if it was only for one night." No words followed. The silence stretched, heavy and absolute. Then, unable to bear it, Claire turned and fled. Tears broke loose and streaked down her cheeks, swept into the chill morning air as she vanished into the colorless hush of the town. For a moment, it was as though she had never been there at all. Noah remained behind the counter, his fingers clenched tightly around the coffee cup. His face sagged under the weight of something that felt deeper than betrayal. It was the sting of trust draining quietly from the chest, leaving a hollow ache in its place. Near the window, the visitors' phones chimed endlessly. Claire Bennett spotted at small lakeside cafe. Runaway bride is trending worldwide. The world outside had found her, and just like that, the fragile calm they had shared was gone. Late afternoon, the rain had long since stopped, but the scent of wet earth lingered, clinging to the air like a forgotten song. Weak sunlight filtered through the thinning grey, casting pale, hesitant streaks across the narrow street, faint as old memories. Harbour lights sat nearly empty. Only the soft tick of the wall clock broke the silence, joined by the absence of radio music and the quiet rustling of sheer curtains caught in the lazy wind. Noah sat alone at his usual corner table. In front of him lay a pale grey scarf, the one Claire had left behind in her rush that morning. He held it gently, fingers smoothing over the faint creases, where the fabric still clung to the ghost of cocoa and something far more fragile, something unnamed. He unlocked his phone. The internet was a storm. Every headline screamed her name. Heiress Claire Bennett shocks finance world. Vanishes before billion-dollar wedding. Runaway bride sparks nationwide search. Bennett legacy in turmoil. Rebellion or collapse. Noah scrolled, each line sharper than the last. Every word felt clinical, cold. Every comment cut deep. And nowhere did anyone ask the only question that mattered: was Claire okay? Did anyone else see her the way he had, shaking, silent, gripping her cocoa like a lifeline, sitting beside the fire with eyes desperate not for escape, but for a moment of trust? She wasn't a scandal. She was a person. Noah closed his eyes. Her face bloomed in his mind, vivid and aching. Not the polished bride from glossy headlines, but the girl in oversized sleeves and damp hair, too tired to pretend, too human to hide. He exhaled slowly, then, almost without thinking, reached for the small wooden shelf nearby. Resting there was an old cassette player, dusty, scratched, the last thing he still kept from his father. The tape inside clicked to life, crackling softly until his father's voice broke through, low and familiar as a long-lost anchor. Kindness doesn't need to be understood, Noah. You just have to believe it's worth offering. He had heard that sentence countless times, but tonight it hit differently, like a hand on his shoulder when he needed it most. After a long, still moment, Noah opened his eyes. They were different now. Steady but clear, he rose, not hurried, not hesitant. The scarf still in hand, he wrapped it carefully, as one might clutch a map when setting out toward the unknown. Not knowing the destination, but certain of the reason for going. The bell above the cafe door rang softly as he pushed it. Open. This time it wasn't to welcome someone in. It was to chase after something true. Noah walked fast through the damp street, the wind tugging at his hair, his coat billowing faintly behind him. He didn't know where Claire had gone, but a fragment of memory surfaced, something from the night before. She had stopped outside the small bookstore at the end of the street and asked him, half playful, half wistful, "Have you read The Dream Passer? They say the ending is really sad." Noah turned toward the bookstore, and there on the wooden bench just outside its door he found it, a pencil sketch. Soft, trembling lines captured harbor lights in gentle detail, drawn as if through rain. Beneath it, in a slanted, delicate hand, was a single note. If someone once saw this place as a refuge, could they ever return? Noah's hand tightened around the drawing. He didn't need directions anymore. He knew exactly where to go. The town, in the tender hush of late afternoon, felt steeped in nostalgia. Raindrops still clung to the roadside trees, slipping down in slow, deliberate drops that dotted the cobblestones like memories too heavy to dry. Noah moved quickly, down the narrow street, eyes sweeping past familiar shops, shuttered windows and puddles reflecting the faded sky, searching, though even he couldn't quite say for what. Or perhaps he could. The wind threaded through his tangled hair, tugging at his coat. He clutched the grey scarf tightly now, not as protection but as a sign, or maybe a promise. He stopped when he reached the old bookstore at the end of the street. Yesterday, Claire had lingered here, her gaze brightening as she spotted the Dream Passer in the dusty window. She had asked him then almost playfully, yet edged with something deeper. What do you think if a character ran away from their own life, just to live honestly for one night? He had only smiled. But now those words echoed back, heavy, with meaning he had failed to catch. Outside the shop on a weathered wooden bench, something small and half-hidden beneath an old paperback caught his eye, a pencil sketch. Simple, rough around the edges, yet brimming with feeling. Harbor lights. Drawn softly, the light from its windows hazy but glowing. The fireplace, the wooden tables, all captured with tender imperfection. He recognized the style instantly. Claire's, the way she once described, just to hold on to a moment, not to impress anyone. Noah turned the sketch over. On the back, faint ink whispered across the page. If someone once saw this place as a refuge, could they ever return? His heart tightened, suspended for a beat too long. The words weren't simply musings, they were a quiet plea. An unspoken request for forgiveness for a way back, if only someone would offer it. And then he remembered. Yesterday morning, Claire had asked the delivery driver casually, almost too casually, "What time does the last bus leave town? Which direction does it go?" Noah didn't hesitate. He tucked the drawing into his coat pocket, turned sharply, and started down the street at a near run. He didn't need a map. He knew where she would be. The only place left, the bus stop at the edge of town. The sky had shifted into evening now. The last light of the day fell like spilled gold across the pavement, soft and fleeting. Noah ran, heart pounding, not from exhaustion, but from something urgent and wordless inside him, a voice screaming, "Don't let her go." And then he saw her, Claire. She sat alone on the weathered bench, framed by the emptiness of the station and the muted colors of the dying light, waiting. Not just for a bus, but for something else entirely. She sat curled up on the weathered bench, clutching a small backpack against her chest like a final shield. The oversized coat engulfed most of her, but couldn't fully hide the wrinkled remains of her wedding dress peeking out, once chosen. With meticulous care for the century's grandest wedding, now no more than a faded burden trailing her like a memory too heavy to shed. Her face was pale, lips cracked and dry. Dark circles hollowed her eyes, rimmed red. She had cried, maybe on the way here, maybe long before. Then came footsteps, steady, unhurried, but certain, each step closing the distance like a truth approaching. Claire looked up. She met his gaze, warm, familiar, yet carrying the weight of something raw and unspoken. Noah stood before her, without his apron or cafe clothes, just a man holding the grey scarf she'd left behind, his fingers curled tightly around it. His eyes weren't demanding, but they burned with the need to understand. Her voice broke as it came out, raspy and defeated. "You're here to take me back, aren't you?" she said. "Back to them, back to the wedding, back to the life I ran from." Noah didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved slowly and sat across from her. Not too close, but close enough that their breaths could meet quietly in the space between. Silence stretched between them. Not tense, but necessary, like air right before a decision. Then Noah spoke, his voice low but unwavering. "No." His eyes stayed fixed on hers. "I didn't come to take you back," he said softly. "If you still want to run, I'm here to run with you." Claire froze. Her shoulders trembled as though the words didn't belong in any version of the story she knew, but Noah kept going, each word unspooling from somewhere deep, from a place he hadn't known he carried. "I don't care if you're Claire Bennett, or whose daughter you are, or that you're the runaway bride splashed across headlines. I only remember the girl who sat shivering by the fire and still whispered thank you when I gave her cocoa." Claire bit down on her lip. Her fingers tightened on the straps of her backpack until her knuckles blanched. Tears pooled, quietly, not dramatic or loud, just inevitable, rising from something too long restrained. Noah leaned forward slightly, his voice softer now, nearly tender. "If you want to keep running, I won't stop you. But if you want to stay, I'll make you another cup of cocoa. Not out of duty, not because of your name, but because you deserve to have somewhere to call home." Claire didn't answer. She broke instead. Tears streamed down, quietly and freely, for the first time without shame. Not because she was lost, but because at last someone had chosen to see her. Without thinking, without asking, she crossed the space and threw herself into his arms. Noah caught her, holding tight, tight enough as though letting go meant losing her again to a world too cold to understand. They said nothing. They didn't need to. In that space between them, every old wound softened, healed not by words but by the quiet courage of staying. Far off, the sun dipped lower behind the lake, slipping quietly beneath the horizon, its fading light wrapped around them, gentle and golden, as if blessing only those who had truly found each other at the end of a storm. Morning arrived tender and clear. Sunlight slipped shyly through the fogged cafe windows, reaching into every wooden nook of harbor lights like a soft greeting from the waking sky. The air inside was much the same, still warm, but something had quietly shifted. A new rhythm, fragile yet unmistakably alive, stirred beneath the familiar calm. Behind the counter, Claire was fussing with the milk steamer, her cheeks tinged pink under the gentle light. She frowned in concentration, twisting the wand awkwardly. Each wrong turn sent a spray of frothy milk splattering across her sleeves and the counter, leaving pale speckles like clumsy constellations. "Damn it," she muttered, adjusting again. Wrong direction. Another burst shot out. Beside her, Noah leaned casually against the counter, arms folded, his expression caught somewhere between patience and amusement. "Welcome to the rebellious world of milk foam," he said, trying not to laugh. Claire shot him a look but couldn't stop the reluctant smile tugging at her lips. She tried once more, and this time the milk splashed directly onto her fingers. They both broke into laughter, not forced, not polite. Real laughter, clear and effortless, as if, after all the storms, they had finally allowed themselves to be happy, if only in this small, fleeting moment. Wiping her hands on the cloth at her waist, Claire poured the milk into a prepared mug of cocoa. She placed the cup on the counter, cupping it lightly, not for warmth, but as if grounding herself with its steady heat. Her voice softened, the levity fading into something rawer. "I don't have anything, Noah. No name. No fortune, just me's and a mess I haven't even figured out how to clean up yet." Noah didn't answer right away. Instead, he laid his hand gently over hers, not possessive, only present, steady. A silent way of saying, "I'm here." "That's enough," he said quietly, his voice warm and low as the steam curling between them. Claire met his eyes. The sunlight brushed across Noah's face, illuminating its rough edges, imperfect, human, and wholly sincere. He leaned in slightly, his gaze unwavering. "I don't need Claire Bennett," he told her, voice firm yet tender. "I don't care about your family name or who you were supposed to be. I only care about the girl who sat beside my fireplace, trembling, but still said thank you for a cup of cocoa. The girl who dared step out of her story and say, 'I just want to be myself.'" Claire didn't laugh, but she smiled, truly smiled, fuller than she had in all the time since she fled her wedding. For the first time, there was nothing left to hide, she whispered, her voice light as the spoon stirring her cocoa. "So, how about we start over? With another cup?" Noah nodded, his lips curving softly. "Deal." Their mugs clinked quietly, nothing grand or ceremonial. Just two hands warming around cocoa, fragrant and tender, enough to make them believe in something new. Not bound by rules or expectation, only by the simple, willing choice to begin again. A year later, morning unfurled gently over the lakeside town, its early spring warmth gliding through the streets like a tender sigh. Sunlight, soft and golden, dripped from the leaves, slipped between branches, and danced across the still surface of the lake. The air smelled faintly of damp earth, and something sweeter, the buttery trace of pastries baking somewhere just around the corner, where harbor lights stood quietly awake. It all looked much the same. But if you paid attention, you'd feel it. Something had changed, not because of the new paper flowers hanging from the porch or the freshly painted walnut chairs gleaming softly by the windows. No, it was in the air itself, the feeling of a place no longer just for passing through, but for pausing, for staying, for daring, when ready to begin again. The wooden sign above the door had been scrubbed clean weekly, just as always. But this year, beneath the name, a new line had been hand-carved, delicate and intentional. Harbor Lights. A harbor for every storm. Inside, sunlight spilled across the room, mingling with laughter. The space still held its quiet soul, but now there was a new ease woven through it. The smell of fresh croissants, hot cocoa, and aged wood whispered softly, like old stories told without urgency. In the reading nook, three children huddled together over a comic book, giggling uncontrollably at a cat wearing a ridiculous hat. That corner had been Claire's idea, born the day she saw a boy standing shyly outside, nose pressed to the glass, too hesitant to come in. Claire stepped out of the small kitchen, wearing a dark brown apron and carrying a tray of freshly baked pastries. Her hair was tied up loosely, stray strands falling gently across her cheeks. No makeup, no spotlight, just quiet peace. She moved from table to table, offering warm smiles to each guest. There was no pretense in them, no duty, only a woman who belonged, whose presence felt like home. Near the garden corner, a watercolor painting hung framed on the wall. Claire and Noah stood side by side in it, captured during the opening of the cafe's new backyard garden. Their gazes met softly in the painting, speaking silently of what everyone already knew. They had chosen each other. In the middle of life's mess, the artist had been a drifter, someone Claire once invited in for free cocoa when she found him soaked and uncertain, hesitating in the rain. Noah emerged from the kitchen then, carrying two steaming mugs of cocoa. He no longer wore the guarded look he used to. His smile now came easy, full and unreserved. He set a mug in front of Claire and leaned in slightly, his voice low but certain. For the woman who dared to believe in herself. Claire met his eyes. In that instant, she didn't just see the man she loved, she saw herself too, the version from a year ago, drenched and lost, clutching a cup of cocoa offered without questions, and she smiled. Not brightly, not dramatically, but fully. A smile shaped by every storm weathered, every choice made, every quiet victory earned. She lifted her cup gently. Then, "Here's to another cup," she said softly. Noah nodded. "Deal." Their mugs clinked together. No fanfare, no glitter, but something tender stirred in the air, noticed even by those nearby, as if hearts could hear the faint sound of something quietly, bravely, beginning again. Claire took a sip. The cocoa tasted just as rich as that very first night, only this time she wasn't hiding. This time she had stayed. She was no longer the runaway bride of a billion-dollar wedding. No longer Claire Bennett, headline heiress dissected by strangers. Now she was simply Claire, the woman who made cocoa every morning, the woman who read stories with children, the woman who knew that the storm years ago hadn't broken her, but had carried her here, to a place quiet enough that for the first time she could hear her own voice. Outside, a soft breeze whispered through the window. The scents of pastries and cocoa mingled, curling gently past the paper flowers swaying from the porch, as though the town itself had exhaled. Everyone has their storm. But sometimes what we need isn't a place to hide. It's a small cafe warm enough to make us stop, breathe, and find our way back to ourselves. Thank you for joining the journey of Claire and Noah, a story without grand gestures or thunderous drama, yet filled with quiet truths we all recognize, moments of feeling lost, the longing to be seen, and the deep yearning to find a place we can call home. If something here touched you, a line of dialogue, the image of a warm cup of cocoa, or simply the tender exchange of glances between two souls, I hope you'll share this story with someone who might also be searching for a place to pause and breathe. Subscribe to stay connected as we continue exploring more stories like this, tales of hearts quietly meeting in a world that too often forgets to slow down. And if you right now find yourself caught in the middle of your own storm, I hope you too will discover your harbor lights. Until our next story, remember, there is always someone ready to make you a cup of cocoa even before you find the words to say why you need it.